Good morning, everyone. So today I want to give you a little sneak peek on how I prepare to go out of town with having the horses. So I was able to leave them for 5 months this summer, and part of the equation is a wonderful team, and the other part of the equation is great instructions. So we're going to dive into the great instructions today. First, I'm going to get the horses started eating, get started on chores, and then we'll get going with the instructions. All right, everyone, so the horses have started eating. They're all happy and content, so I'm going to walk through a little bit on how I laid out my chore instructions. So I have them posted on a bulletin board here behind me, and I have a few different sections. Now, these instructions are for the summer. I have not changed them over to winter yet because I haven't left this winter, although I do think it's great to have up-to-date instructions out at all times, just in case you have an emergency situation and you're not able to do chores. But for now, we're going to walk through the summer and what everybody had to take care of while I was away this summer. All right, so the first section up here is the basic instructions. So these are step-by-step instructions on how to do chores. They're not super in-depth. I'll get into where I keep my in-depth instructions later, but this is just for somebody who sort of knows what they're doing to be able to glance up and say, oh, yep, that's right. So for me, number one is to catch the horses. Our horses don't eat in stalls. We don't have enough stalls for all the horses. So I end up tying them up to the fence and feeding them their grain individually that way. Number two is to feed the grain. So scoop all the grain in the bins and feed them the grain. You'll notice I do not say any amounts on this sheet. I just say feed grain. Number three is pick manure. So while they're eating, you're out there picking manure. Number four is check the water. So we have a 100-gallon stock tank that we like to keep full. If it's below a third of the way, I always say fill it up. In the winter, I try to keep it even more full than that. And number five is release the horses. So once they're finished eating, untie them and put everything away. So that's sort of the basic overview on that sheet. Now, if we go to the next sheet, this is the feed chart. So this is where all of the instructions are on the amounts everybody gets per horse. I always go in the order of the pecking order. So up at the top is Joe. Joe gets 1 scoop of Senior Glow in the morning, 1 scoop of Senior Glow in the evening. Now, a couple things to notice about my feed chart. The types of feed are color coordinated. So you have Senior Glow in blue and low starch in red. Now, the feed bins that hold the feed are also labeled Senior Glow in blue and low starch in red. And the bags of feed, so if you have to fill the feed bins, the Senior Glow bag is blue and the low starch bag is red. So just try to keep everything as simple as possible and as organized as possible to eliminate mistakes. And you'll also notice down the side, each horse has a color. And all of those horses have that name tag with their color on their feed bin and on their blanket. Next, I have the cat instructions, which are super simple. They just get some food and make sure their water is filled. And then you have before you leave, and those are the top 4 things that I want checked before somebody leaves after doing chores. Number 1, making sure all the gates are closed and latched and that their safety clip is in place. So nobody wants the horses getting out while you are out of town. Number 2 is turn off all the lights. This one's really easy to forget, but you don't want to waste that much electricity. So lights go off. Number 3 is to mark chores as complete on the calendar. Now, I don't do this typically when I'm just having a weekend farm sitter, but this summer when I was gone for so long and we had so many different people helping with chores, I wanted to make sure that we had a way to mark down that chores had been done so that if my parents came out later in the day or somebody else came out to ride, that they could see whether or not the horses had been fed. So we have a calendar that's hanging on the wall, and each day is marked with the name of the person who's assigned to do chores that day, and they can check it off as soon as they're done. All right, and the last one is to make sure the doors are in the right position. So we have 2 doors that we have to think about here in the barn. We have our big roll-up garage door, and we have our small Dutch door over here. All right, moving down, we have our next this is what I sort of call the alert sheet or the notification sheet. Basically, this sheet changes depending on the time of year. Only a couple more things. We have pictures of all the horses here. We also had a picture of our team down here just for fun because they're awesome. I am so thankful to each and every one of them for everything they did this summer. And then we have our emergency contact information. So this includes my number, my parents' number, my vet's number. So that's sort of it for the board. Now there was one more thing that I wrote this summer. So I had this book. Now this binder holds the in-depth chore instructions. So these are a really quick overview and most of the time they're sufficient. But in here, I had the contact information for everybody who was on the horse care team this summer, a copy of the summer rules, and then detailed instructions about how to take care of everyone. So this goes into a lot more of the details than goes on the board, but if somebody's really confused, they can read through this and pretty much figure it out. I had a section for problem solving, so this is like, what if the horses get out? What if the horses have a scratch? What if the cats aren't home at night when I would need to lock them up? And then on this side, I had an in-depth chart on how to wean the horses onto pasture. And then the last little part here, I had a little buy-in guide for my parents who were in charge of purchasing all of the horse feed and cat food and dog food. And then over here was just a little outline for the girls who were riding. And that was just going through some of the individual training things that I think each horse needs to work on. So I hope this gives you a little bit of insight on how I organize things when I have to be out of town for a weekend or a week or 5 months, and gives you a little bit of a guide for when you're creating your own chore instructions, whether you have a big farm, a few horses, or even just a dog or a cat. All right, everyone, thanks for following along. I hope you had an absolutely wonderful Christmas and that you have a great New Year's celebration this upcoming week. I will see you again next Sunday.